that you wrote on your Substack about strange days have found us. And it says here, the news these days is mostly so dismal that we had really best hope not. Yet if there's any consolation, we live in interesting times full of unintended consequences and surprising connections. And the past few days have been extremely interesting indeed. So talk a little bit about those surprising connections and what is most, quote unquote, interesting about
Well, we live in a globalized world, and we have for a long time. 110 years ago, a shot fired in Sarajevo caused the Tsar to be overthrown in Russia in a way, 100,000 Americans or more to die, Germany to be so humiliated that it elected Hitler and ended up creating the Holocaust, which ended up helping establish Israel, which was invaded by Hamas, which brought us to where we are today, which could get Trump elected. Trump really has a much better chance if the constituencies I mentioned before are very, very angry at Biden. And there are other incredible, complex moving parts in the background. The Republicans don't want to aid Ukraine anymore because all their attention is on Israel. If they don't, and Putin decides to be tempted to throw everything he has at Kiev, and he might succeed this time if he gets lucky, China will be tempted to do the same in Taiwan. And the U.S. is in an incredibly excruciating position vis-a-vis Taiwan. We don't recognize it as a country, and yet Biden just last year confirmed that we would rush to its defense for many reasons. Not only because it's the moral thing to do, I suppose, and it's because and because they're a quite impressive democracy, but because they control the world supply of semiconductors as well, and that has a way of focusing the mind on what a moral imperative it is.
It does. So the simplest way to kind of articulate your argument would be that if Trump wins again and he's back in the White House, that's a win for China. That's a win for Russia. That's a win for Iran. For that's the argument you're making.
Yeah. And it's a win for Netanyahu. Many Israelis are starting to conclude that, Netanyahu has an interest in prolonging the war. And maybe he doesn't mind ratcheting it down a little bit because as part of that equation, if it's less intensive, it's also more prolonged. And he's happy to play for time because he's hoping Trump will return to office. And of course, if Trump returns to office, there'll be a lot less pressure for humanitarian concerns and really for anything at all, because it becomes a completely transactional global situation. Anyone who thinks that Netanyahu is above such a calculation, as we've discussed before, Connell, doesn't really fully understand that we're talking here about one of modern history's spectacular cynics and master machinators.
We always appreciate your point of view. Dan Perry knows that region and the world very, very well from having covered it for so many years, live from Tel Aviv with us. Thank you, Dan. Good to see you again.